What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're talking about just so much exciting Final Fantasy news and rumors. And so a lot of this is going to be speculation, but there's stuff we know. And essentially we're asking the question, what do we want to see from Square Enix this E3? Chris, why don't you drop in and say hi and say who do we shouting out today?
Yeah, so thank you to Lortanish. We had a Lamatod raid on stream this morning, and so chat has been popping off. Everybody's been hanging out, having a good time clicking on signs. And Lortanish, we appreciate you being here.
Yes, thanks, Lord Nish. Hopefully, I'm not butchering the name, but yeah, congratulations and welcome everybody. Yeah, I tuned in. I was at work, so just a quick aside. All day, I've been off site for the first time in over a year, and so I'm lurking on stream, and I go, wow, there's 600 people. This isn't even FanFest. What's happening? So Housing Savage continues, and he's still continuing to click on the sign even as we record. So, guys, if you guys haven't heard right now, rumors are kind of showcasing that there might be another, or at least semi-timed PlayStation 5 exclusive Final Fantasy game developed by Team Ninja, kind of seemingly Souls-esque or somewhat connected to that. That's the rumors that were flying today. That's what I saw this morning as I was leaving for work. And then all of a sudden, here I am sitting down and saying okay, well, we also have 16. We also have Forspoken. We also have the Final Fantasy XI 20th anniversary coming up, in which that they've already said that they're working on something special. And I'm trying to keep my hype down into the dirt on that one. But anyhow, it just kind of begs the question, what do we want to see this year from E3? I think it's been a hell of a year coming off of last year and into this one. I have some really big hopes. Chris, what do you want to see from Square?
I want to see something from 16. This kind of Souls reference, like when you hear action RPG, the first thing I think of is Yoshi, because obviously as a huge 14 fan, and knowing he's working on another title, immediately I'm wondering oh, does he get a hand in this? Because I know he's a huge fan of the Diablo franchise and he's always wanted to work on a game like that.
Yeah.
And so that's immediately where all I can picture is him working on 16. He's well, I didn't know that we're getting one of those too. So it'll be very exciting to see a Final Fantasy, a new Final Fantasy game come out that would be an action RPG. Just one of the great things about the Final Fantasy franchise as a whole is it has covered so many styles of combat, so many pacings of the way it tells stories. It's a very diverse, somebody saying, oh, I like this Final Fantasy game. Well, I like all Final Fantasy games. Ooh, I cannot promise that.
Yeah, that's not a guarantee.
That's a pretty diverse genre to define as Final Fantasy games, but
it's kind of like the Mario series with Mario is missing. Oh wait, this is a little bit different. A little bit.
I was playing Mario Tennis. Why like Mario 64? I don't know.
Yeah. The at the core of it, I think what we'll see that we know of as obviously key showpieces is 16 and Forspoken. They showed off Forspoken at their last big event, actually giving it its name, built in the Luminous engine. So obviously, if you guys aren't aware, Square Enix, multiple studios, all doing multiple things. In fact, they're also in charge of Tomb Raider and so many things. So when you think of just a publisher in and of themselves, they have quite the diverse backlog and everything connected to that. But thinking that through it, when we talk about another Final Fantasy in that regards, would you expect that, let's say they let a team do a Final Fantasy game, would that be a numbered Final Fantasy, or would you see that as an offshoot?
No, the rumor is that it's called Final Fantasy Origin. I don't like the word origin just as a general word, because it implies this core nature where now 20 years from now people are oh, I want to get in the Final Fantasy game. Oh, I'll play the Origin one. So I think that word, I think things like core, base, foundation, origin, beginnings, I think words like that carry a little too much context for likely what one game will mean in the big history of Final Fantasy as a term.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a named game like Dissidia or something like that, where I do think there's a named game where it's, I think that's more appropriate.
Yeah. What about, do you think we're going to get any additional Final Fantasy XIV news? Do you think they would be saving anything for E3 this year?
So it's June 12th. So thinking back through kind of our timeline, it wouldn't be a bad time to have some news around 556 or 558. It is not required. I think it's too soon to get another live letter. So May what? Middle of May was FanFest, and so that's not even a month after.
Right.
So I don't
Historically,
think,
they do a Square
and so
Enix live
historically
letter.
there'd be a live letter there, but
Yeah.
it's quick, and so there doesn't have to be one.
Also, I don't
It'd
think
be
travel
really
is going
nice
to be
because
open,
we still
right?
don't know anything about island sanctuaries.
Mhm.
We still don't know anything about all the 6.1 changes that people are concerned about. We still don't know. I mean, there's FanFest. Actually, if you only watched FanFest for 6.0 confirmation news, it was pretty light.
Well,
I had a great time,
right.
but just as 6.0 news, it was pretty light. And so if there's more they want to tell us prior to launch, E3 is a great place to do so.
I think, like, just to kind of think on conventions, though, especially with travel and how the world's slowly getting back to normal, in a way, PAX could even be a better venue this time around, or GDC, where those are closer to release and obviously closer to maybe more people have been vaccinated and maybe things are opening up a little bit more.
Right.
In that
it's
regards.
possible Yoshi is not stateside, so
Right.
they can't go to E3, and so it'd be a digital thing, like the Treehouse event type thing that they did. What was that, 2 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
When they had the like Square Enix event that was like a Nintendo Treehouse.
Yeah, and that was something that was really unique to see, and that's what I'm wondering if we'll see PlayStation do something of the like. I don't know at the time of this recording, but the last time I heard is PlayStation is not really showing up for this E3, so any kind of PlayStation exclusive announcements would be coming out of the different publishers, in this case Square Enix being kind of a key one, as Sony and Square Enix seem to be getting closer and closer on these timed exclusives. We also have Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. That should be coming out soon, if not like around that same time. So we're wondering, like, do you think we're going to see Final Fantasy VII R2, Chapter 2, Episode 2? Do you think that's going to be a showpiece?
I'd love to see that announced.
Yeah.
I would love to see that announced. I know that there were a lot of people disappointed that the first one is part of a storied franchise, but the advantage of being this like trilogy that it's going to be is that it gives them a chance to go really deep with those stories, and I think it's going to be really hard to make a judgment of what 7R is until 7R is complete. So of course it's time for the next one. Seeing more from the in-house teams is what I'm more interested in. So like I'm super interested they're doing an action RPG, but the numbered in-house core titles are something that interests me more. And so another hype train, I mean, now that they've opened Pandora's box, another hype trailer for 16, like I would prefer them not to announce things until they're closer to date, because Square Enix does have plenty of a history with being like
10-year
and
franchise.
this will come out eventually maybe.
Yeah.
So like but we're here now. We are in the post 16 announcement world, and at this point I would love to see more about 16.
Yeah, I would venture to bet, based off of what they already showed us, Yoshi P's understanding and the fatigue that a lot of people have had with Square Enix as of late, especially when it comes to rework with video games. When we talk with Larry's art, it's like, how do even video games even exist? Like when you start talking about managing 300, 400, 500, 600 people trying to achieve this thing, it becomes almost like a management, infrastructural nightmare. But the idea that is that 16, they showed off actual gameplay, where before in the previous times, it's usually just a very like hype and cinematic trailer, very like rendered movie and things like that. But this one actually had some combat, not a lot of detail, but I think now would be a really good time to start that, unless they're really close to finishing off episode 2. The thing that I start to wonder is that with 16, with this rumored new Final Fantasy game, with 14, with like, how do they not in themselves cannibalize the news cycle, right? Like we had on one night FanFest and Phantasy Star Online 2. Like it was like, for me, like, oh gosh, that was hard because these are two games I'm passionate about. But so it's like, how do you not as one company be like, hey guys, we're dropping 7R2 and then next week 16. Like I think the internet would have couldn't process that. Like I don't have that much time in my life to play two full Square Enix RPGs 1 week apart. Can you just give me a month? Can you just spread it out? Like, hit me up every week, every month for money or something of that nature. Do you think, so we talked about 14, we talked about 16, the rumors, and so I want to kind of shift.
So Square Enix would be there, not Final Fantasy. So with Square Enix being there, we know Avengers is getting an expansion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Black Panther expansion or whatever. We know that, there are other things. They made that big push into kind of the Tomb Raider big combined edition or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So Square Enix is a huge thing. There's Project Square Triangle or whatever the shape
Ooh,
order
yes.
is something from the
That's
the
coming in
Octopath Traveler team
2022. Yeah,
that the trailer looked great.
Have you
And
played
so
it?
there's a lot more that, like, if they want it to come out this fall, this winter, Square Enix alone has a very diverse set of properties that goes way, way, way beyond the Final Fantasies, even if that's just mostly what you and I consume.
Have you played the demo for Project Triangle Strategy?
No, but I watched Rook play it, which
Yeah.
is debatably better for me than me playing a demo. I think I got more out of watching her play it than I could have ever gotten out of playing.
Good to know. Yeah, I played a little bit so far, and I've really enjoyed the experience. And then the question that I have is that as Square Enix goes even more, like where things are more timed exclusive, even, Octopath Traveler is on Xbox and PC and Stadia now. I'm like, do I really need to start this on Switch and pick it up again on PC and pick it up again? Like, I'm such a simp for Square because I just spent so much money on that company. I want to talk a little bit about Final Fantasy XI. I've been playing it. You've kind of were looking at my stream, which was really nice. And the game is 19 years old, and so when you look at the state of it, like there's like a clear divide. World of Warcraft is a model that I think a big part of the 11 community is looking at in terms of will they bring out classic servers in the kin of 14 and having one sub to kind of to rule them all, or will Square Enix just continue to kind of like private servers, don't do that, but just like with parsers in 14.
I don't know how much the classic team falls under the retail team.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Yoshi P has been working on 16 in some capacity since Heavensward, and so like a lot of people are concerned suddenly after the announcement about his workload.
Mm-hmm.
He's been under the workload, they just didn't tell us.
Yeah.
So when he looked tired before, he was more tired than we thought he was.
Yes.
And so my question then is who's in charge of that? When they start putting resources into it, it is something I would love to see them invest in. It's something that, especially during like 0.55 patches, especially if like another ultimate gets cut or something like that, it is the sort of thing that says, hey, to the players who aren't getting content in the area of the game that they enjoy, have you tried this other thing?
Right.
And rolling the subscriptions into this same thing allows WoW's numbers. Right now, it's rumored that once again, just like prior to the launch of Vanilla Classic, that Final Fantasy might be creeping up, maybe passing World of Warcraft in active subscribers. Then Classic launched, and regardless of the health of retail at the time in BFA, it didn't matter because you got to add those numbers together. And so for a company that has, from just a financial standpoint, from their predictions that they're trying to predict to shareholders, when Square Enix, when Yoshi and his team go up and ask for money to the Square Enix team, and the Square Enix team goes out to shareholders and says, here's how we're spending the money in this company, it's an easier ask. I've had bosses in my career that have said, I want to do this thing for you. Give me the ammo I need. When I go into this meeting, here's what they're looking for. You give me that, I'll give you what you want. Mm-hmm. And so like padding those subscriptions together really covers when one game loses something in interest. And so if Endwalker hype wasn't enough to sustain us, imagine if Endwalker suddenly in September got pushed to January.
Right.
This game has a history of not doing stuff like that, but imagine if it did. That's a huge damage to the subscriber base. But imagine if around that same time, hey guys, the new Raiden 11 is coming out. Oh. And so Classic did a lot to protect WoW's subscription numbers. And it's something that, there are people who are like, well, they're just taking advantage of their previous IP. Good. Like,
right.
Please don't play with one hand behind your back. You guys have great content over here that I'm not playing. Draw me into it. Make it easy. Make it right there from my same launcher.
So, just on a note, I see a chat here saying 11 to 14s are different dev teams entirely. Yes and no.
Would Classic also be just that separate?
Well, yes and no. Like a lot of people on the 14 dev team actually were part of the 11 dev team. They're like, so when, they might be two operationally functional different teams, which is exactly how I would run it, because they don't need to be dragged into 14 fixes and code. It's like, no, here's what your workload and case is. But we do know that they're working, the 11 team is working on something, what they announced like 3 years ago, big for 11. And that has me going, Well, thanks for saying big. Now I'm going to actively try and think that all they're going to do is release like a new trust into retail, like something so small that people are like, that was it. Just so that if it is something exciting, because I think if I've talked about this, like if they brought it back to consoles, if they did something insane, like remastered in Unreal Engine or something ridiculous, that would be what I would classify as the big title, like next to that. So I think clearly I have different expectations of the word big than they do, but we'll see. Like, so that's going to be happening. The question is that is that an E3 21 Square Enix announcement?
I thought that was the remaster, and I thought that was canned.
No, the remaster was, but that they announced that was a long time ago. Like, so the remaster, that's where things get tricky in this regards. So you had them working on that as original mobile, and then they like had the project called it was Final Fantasy XI or done in Unreal, and then that got canceled and basically clawed back. The question is that is Square Enix going to just take over that work, or is that just kind of you write that off as a loss? Final Fantasy XI devs, which is the core rooted retail game, I guess we'll use the word retail in this case. They announced that they're actually working on something big for their 20th anniversary and have continued to affirm that. And that's why they said that, hey, we're going to have to, and they actually announced they were stopping development for 11 anyway, and then they continued to develop for it. And then now it's like, well, okay, we're going to add this. So they've been adding a new story to 11 as a part of retail, and they're working up to something. And so it's, I don't want to set my expectations to the moon, but it's like at the end of the day, I'm like, I would like to know what it is. And next year is the 20th anniversary. So it's like, I guess we'll have to see what they ultimately decide to do. We'll have to see how that plays out. I think for me,
great opportunity.
Oh, it's huge.
I get nervous about making in-game development, especially post-COVID. I get nervous about making an anniversary a date they have to stick to.
Yeah.
Because then it starts to be, do you ship it or do you do it right? Obviously, if you can ship it and do it right, of course.
That's the ideal. Yeah.
But what happens if you can only pick one?
Yeah.
Which one do you pick? Do you ship it on time or do you ship it correct?
There's a part of me that wants, like when we look at kind of their vast library, I hope that we see more either modernization or emulation of their games of their past catalog brought to the forefront. I think if Square Enix announced a Final Fantasy VI remake in the vein of like Octopath Traveler, that would be something that would just have me over the moon in terms of that. If they announced a honestly, I would like any of their core like classical Final Fantasy games that are especially in that 3x4 aspect ratio, just to get the Octopath Traveler treatment, to have that legacy, like current and modern and to a degree, while at the same time allowing you to experience it kind of in a new way. And then also having probably, because for purists, like, hey, here's the original that you can play in that 3x4 if you wish. I think that would be something really exciting to see, but not being hung up on that. I know that the Square Enix's CEO has said that they're actively working on cloud-only games that can only be run in the cloud. They're actively working and researching on some of these things with the newest technology. So at the core of it, like when we look for Spoken, we think it's 16. I think what we're going to be seeing is hopefully, like, and even chat's been kind of sounding off, like with theories of dates. Like imagine having one, if not two, big Final Fantasy releases or Square Enix like JRPG releases every year, which will have been kind of I think kind of a step up in terms of their production and things like that. But that's the question that I had that I wanted to talk to you guys about. The question to you guys here in chat as well as in the comments, like, what do you guys want to see? What's like the mic drop moment that you're hoping for to see at this year's E3? Chris, do you have any final thoughts? Did you have a hidden phrase that I clearly missed?
No. We got a phrase for the next video, so we'll film that right after this. And that's it. Thanks to everybody hanging out on stream today. It's been awesome.
Perfect. Clicking signs. No luck so far. So how many hours are you at in Savage?
I don't know. 64 at the beginning of the stream.
Okay.
And we did a 6-hour stream prior to this. So by the time we're done filming today, tack another 7 onto that.
Yeah.
So
all right.
71. Lucky 71.
All right, guys. That's going to wrap it up for this video. For Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you have a fantastic day. I hope to see you next time. But until then,
take care.